Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Health meeting to order at 6:35 p.m. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First up on the agenda is to accept the minutes of the July 20th, 2019 meeting.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from the July.
Second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Item number 3 is tobacco training in Sturbridge on September 23rd from MHOA for the inspection and compliance checks. We received information that they're going to be holding a training. As you know, we no longer have Worcester helping. So we're going to attend the training. I've offered to attend. It's in the afternoon. I think it's like 1:30, 2:30 to 3:30 or 4. So if you don't have any objection, Ted would like to go as well, just so that he gets all the information.
I have to ask for administrative permission, but yes.
Oh, okay.
Is that
What do you think, Ron? Should we let him go?
More candy
Is that a
next
motion?
time. I make a motion to allow you to go.
And we'll bring back information, and they're going to train, we're going to learn information, and then they're going to train us on how to do compliance checks.
Okay.
So we can bring that back and start doing things. Okay. Item number 4 is the public hearing for the purpose of discussing Board of Health regulations and permitting fees of animals. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. It is 7:36 p.m. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. We just want to set off, we are going to be here to discuss the animal regulations that we are putting out there. There have been some changes that were done to the original one. Town Council had recommended some changes. We went forward, adjusted those changes. And basically, our intent here today is to discuss them. The intent for us creating these regulations, there's a lot of backyard chickens and things going on. We want to encourage that, but we want it done safely and in harmony with the neighborhoods, and we want to protect the health and welfare of the town.
And the chickens.
And the chickens and everyone.
And fowl and anything else.
So we will be opening it up to questions after. I do ask that when you come up, please approach the table, have a seat, be sure to speak into the microphone, state your name and address, and then please address directly through the chair, and we'll open it to discussion. Okay, so we have the new regulations. Some of the changes we set forth were, one thing is our regulations are completely Board of Health regulations. They are separate from the zoning. Zoning has their own bylaws. This is just our regulations. Right now, our animal inspector does go out and inspect, but this is a way that she can keep more definitive records that which need to be turned into the state, and we can make sure that there's not unsafe or unsanitary conditions. So we changed the zoning setback, we changed the setbacks on section D to make all the setbacks the same as the zoning, so that there was no discrepancies or anything, just to make it level across the board. And then on section 7, there were some changes done. We had discussed different things about fees, and it was discussed about the option of the first year not charging a fee to find out what it really costs. The state mandates that we pay the animal inspector a certain amount each year. So if we set up how many inspections she does, divide that out, we can come up with what the fee would need to be to cover that cost that's state mandated. Okay. So I know you guys have had a chance to read through what was sent back to us from Town Council. So do you have any discussion, questions about what they reviewed on what we did?
No.
So we upped the number, section 2B got adjusted.
Right, it was, basically what it was, they told us to do was, we had it changed. We eliminated B. Town council decided that it was repetitive of A.
Okay.
So just to go then into the next one. Because our original ones were stating like a half acre, then an acre. And they figured why not just say up to an acre instead of defining half acre, acre.
And again, it's gonna be up to the individual homeowner to seek any variances from the zoning board to find out if they can even,
Right, that's all their,
okay.
that's their responsibility. Our main intention is just to be sure that we know who has, and they get inspected by the animal inspector, that they meet our regulations. And it's, again, to encourage that people are allowed to have them, but within a certain reason.
Parameters.
Right, right. Okay. All right, we'll open it up for questions if you guys are good. Okay. At this time, we'll open it up for questions. If you have a question, feel free to come up and ask us.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Michelle Flesh. I live at 13 Mill Road. What happens to those of us who have established farms that have been grandfathered in for years?
Do you have a special permit from the zoning board, or, because that's different from,
I went
Us?
through an attorney years ago to establish my business and to have my animals at my location. And I was told that I'm protected under state law, but I can't remember what it is. I have to have a certain amount per acre per year that I have to report on my taxes, which I always do. And then it's non-conform use because I have two properties, so they consider it two separate
Right.
lots.
right?
So I would fall under on my property a little.
Okay.
So I've always had animals there. Lori can attest to that. So I have no intentions of getting rid of any of my animals at this point. My animals, and again, Laurie can contest, my animals are very well taken care of. They're in sanitary conditions. And I don't think it makes a difference if you have animals, being an animal control officer, if you have animals in a half an acre and have, 10 chickens, or you have 5 acres and you only have 2 chickens. You still can have somebody who is not properly taking care of those birds and spreading disease.
And we completely agree, but we don't want to end up with someone having a half acre and ending up with 50 chickens on a half acre.
I understand. In my opinion, that is, myself as an animal control officer and as an animal inspector, I believe that that would be at the discretion of animal control or an animal inspector to make those decisions.
It does fall under the purview of the Board of Health because we control the animal inspector. The animal inspector reports to the Board of Health here, and they file with the state, and they're under our jurisdiction.
Right, we are the same.
So it does fall under us, so we do have the purview to regulate clean and sanitary conditions. And we don't want to end up in situations where other towns have, where they have ended up with large amounts of chickens on small properties.
Right. And
And
we
that's-
see that all the time, but we also see that a lot of these people really take care of their chickens. Their chicken coops are cleaner than their houses
Oh,
are. So I don't understand the whole sanitary and better health or this. And my other question is, how are you paying for the animal inspector now if you're talking about paying the animal inspector out of these fees?
We're pulling the fee out of the Board of Health budget, which is something that has been crippling the Board of Health budget. And in talking with town council and other towns, it is something that we can charge for the animal inspection. And as long as we are providing documentation as to what we're paying her for, we can charge a reasonable fee.
Okay, but my question is, what do you do about people who are already established?
You would still have to, depending on what you fall under. Now, we had discussed the Mass General Law, Mass Chapter 40A, Section 3. If that's what you're falling under,
I believe that's what I'm falling under.
again, these are not definitive guidelines yet. These are what we have put out to discuss. We've discussed a couple different options with Mass General Law. If you already are established in something, we do have a section in here where you can come for a variance, and that's when you look at a property individually. Just going to use an example. There are properties in Dudley that are 2 acres that have farms all around them. It's a different situation than having 2 acres on Camelot Circle.
Well, I understand. I'm on Mill Road, but the point is, I've already been through an attorney, it's already been established.
That's through zoning.
That-
That's through
Right,
zoning.
I understand, but I'm
So we're-
considered agricultural. So this shouldn't apply to someone like me then, is what I'm saying.
At this point, we're not 100% sure. We're not sure if we're going to keep that. It excludes the Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 3, or if you would have to come for a variance, because it's under the agricultural, what the town determines as agricultural for zoning bylaws. We've been discussing that with town council.
Nothing is set.
Right. These are just our preliminary. We've gone back and forth with town council.
And what you're talking about is the last paragraph, or the last sentence of paragraph 2.
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Right after,
Hi, I'm Deborah Easterbrook.
hi.
My husband and I own a farm on Dresser Hill too,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a few questions as a concerned citizen.
Mhm.
How did this come about? Did this start as a complaint? Was there a complaint about too many chickens or rabbits in close quarters?
We have been having discussions about things that have been affecting other boards of health in the areas, and this has been something that's been going on because backyard chickens are becoming more and more popular. People want to have fresh eggs, completely understand, and a lot of towns are regulating it. So we got together as a board and decided that it was something that we wanted to look into. We felt our animal inspector goes out, it should be something that we are aware of and that we can hopefully encourage people. You want to have chickens, we want you to have them. We just want it to be done in a safe manner and not end up in a situation where you have an overabundance on a small property and things like that.
Do you know how many people in town own chickens?
I can tell you what our animals, I don't know what, I know about roughly what she inspects, but I don't know how many of them have chickens offhand.
Okay, what about people who have like hobby farms? Because I feel like you're including them, and I feel like we're being regulated to death. And I really want to look out for the hobby farm people. I mean, this is an agricultural town.
It is, you're absolutely correct.
You need to remember that, so I don't want it to be destroyed. I want to
No.
encourage people
That's what we're
to
doing.
be more interested in agriculture.
We completely agree, and our regulation doesn't tell you you can or can't.
Right.
You can or can't is totally through the zoning board, that's separate from us. Our regulations is just that, within reason, if you have property and you're using them for, you know, you're having chickens for your own use and things like that, there should be a limit as to what you can have on a piece of property.
Who's going to determine that limit?
It's written in the laws, in the bylaw, in our regulations, excuse
So
me.
you have a number of chickens for 5 acres. That seems like,
Over 5 acres, we do not regulate, that's considered agricultural.
okay, so 3 to 5 acres.
Mhm.
So your board determined no more than 18 individual animals on 3 to 5 acres?
Yes, what we did is we looked at other surrounding towns, and that's what we went with.
I have to disagree, but I understand that's your board decision.
Yes.
Do you have any people with agricultural experience on your board? Or do you
I grew up,
ask for advisors?
yep, we have, we've spoken with our ACO and animal inspector. I grew up with chickens, goats, ducks, everything.
Me too.
She grew up, she had horses, we're very familiar, we've been lifelong residents of Dudley.
Okay. Have you asked the Agricultural Commission for advice?
I've spoken
Input?
to the selectmen with the Agricultural Commission, he's spoken with them, and he spoke to us, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
There's
Paul
quite a
Joseph.
few towns, if I can interrupt, like that.
Absolutely.
We actually read quite a few other towns, and
Mhm.
agricultural type towns that encourage farming, that have regulations in place. similar. So we read through those and sort of piecemeal what we felt was fair.
Okay, I just want to let you know.
Again, we're
I'm-
encouraging this. We
Okay.
want this to happen.
I just want you to be aware that I'm concerned as a citizen.
I appreciate that, absolutely. Thank you. Pam?
Hello,
Hi.
Charlie Marlborough. I live in Dudley. I've lived in Dudley since 1995. My first question would be,
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
my what?
Your name?
Oh, Charlie Marlborough,
Marlboro?
Yeah.
And your address in Dudley?
10 Circle Drive.
Thank you.
I've been here since 1995. I specifically brought my property because we were zoned small agriculture, business, as well as residential. I've had my coop for a long time. I have 11 chickens, and once those pass, since I'm getting older, there won't be any more little chicks. My concern is, are these regulations going forward? Or, these are my pets. I raised them since they were a day old. That bothers me. Nobody's gonna take, my chickens are very healthy. They're going into their 7th year. Excuse me, I might sneeze. Sorry, allergy season. They're going into their 7th year, and probably the max they'll live is till 10. But at the same time, no one's gonna take my chickens. There's no farm that's gonna take a chicken that really
At
is
that
not
age.
a good layer. They're my pets. They have names. They know me. That's a big concern to me, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room. I just feel like some of the offsets, we're making an issue where there hasn't been an issue. I could see if you had legions of people complaining about everything going on in neighborhoods. You know, the noise, the smell, chickens running amok every single week. But that's not happening, you know. And I would love to see regulations where chickens are protected, where when people get them, they don't have them in horrible, cardboard boxes, that they're not running and nobody's making sure they're in the coop at night, so the hawks are getting them, the coyotes are getting them. The raccoons will decimate somebody's pets. I was very glad to see that the library's having a chicken. Before I got chickens, I studied for 2 years. I'm in contact with, if there's any type of avian flu, I'm on special alerts. It never has come in our area recently, but even so, I don't want to lose they're my babies. And people have them as babies and pets for eggs, and also for food supply. So just what that other woman was saying, that's kind of constricting her. I can understand a setback if you're definitely in a residential area, but 50 feet?
That's the zoning bylaw, that's not us. Zoning bylaw states that,
But look at the shed offset. There has to be 2,000 people in town
but
with
again, that's
sheds.
not us. We can only put into regulations what the zoning bylaw already has into effect. We can't underwrite the zoning bylaw, we have no control over that. Bless you.
I'm holding.
No problem.
Well-
We have no control over that.
Are these going forward?
Yes.
No, I'm not.
You would
When
have-
I say going forward, I know you want to.
It would be, you would have 3 months to comply with the regulations. That being said, again, we do have the section of variances that is put into this regulation. Okay? And my question to you is, did you notify the Board of Health when you got chickens?
No, because back then and
It
when I
was
bought the house,
required. It was required.
there
It-
was nothing on any website. I went on everything. I looked at the maps. There was
Because I can
absolutely
remember it,
nothing.
when we had chickens, we had to notify the Board of Health, and it used to play on the cable access. That the Board of Health is, because
Yeah.
of the animal inspector, and that's because she has to go out and inspect.
Yeah.
And that's
But
one of the things.
There was nothing until, I don't know if you were the young woman who came to my house at one point, because I had 4 dogs, so I had the the minute I had the
Probably
4, I had
Jen.
the kennel license.
Jen.
I'm
That
back
would be
to
Jen.
3.
Jen.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember commenting, oh, there's another satellite coop or something. And I just, didn't think anything of it. But there wasn't anything. If you had it, it had to be buried so far in something else. You couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Because I put thousands of dollars
Oh, I
into
completely understand.
building something decent.
And
that-
we're not, again, we're not the ones who can tell you if you can have the chickens or not. That's zoning. They're the ones who allow the chickens or not. We're just trying to state that on certain side pieces of land, certain amounts of chickens are appropriate. If
Without
you-
going overboard.
without having an excess and trying to keep harmony within the neighborhoods.
All of my neighbors love my chickens. They bring the children over. I don't let them in the coop. I have one, they're all friendly, but make sure you wash your hands.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
not touch your face. Do not eat fruit. You're going right home and doing that, aren't you?
And by no means are we saying that people aren't taking care of them.
Right.
There are people who take wonderful care of their animals. And then we have run into some situations where people do have them in a cardboard box or are letting them free roam.
Not
And
disposing of the chicken, feces.
And things like that,
becoming
and-
a nuisance to the neighbors.
yeah, and getting phone calls of chickens wandering the
I feel a lot
neighborhood.
of this is almost punishing people who haven't done anything wrong yet. And why is the town making a problem when there is none? I agree with a lot of this, and I bet you everybody here does. But we're regulating stuff that doesn't have to be regulated. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Put something
Sadly.
out there.
Not the case.
Unfortunately, that is not the case. Jeff, I'm gonna let you,
I would be happy
Thank
to
you.
chime
Are
in.
you the town attorney?
I am from
I
town
should know
council.
that. I'm on a town committee,
Right,
but
yeah,
I just don't recognize you.
I'm Jeff from KP Law. You probably saw me a couple of times at your town meetings if you went to town meeting. Michelle's oftentimes the face of the firm, but I am too. I've done an awful lot of these, and I understand your point. But what happens is, as we go along, more and more of these backyard chickens are becoming very, very popular.
Extremely.
And at the end of the day, we are using some tools to try to regulate them because, let's face it, we always have somebody who, and I'll give you an example, I won't name the town, that passed a regulation very similar to this, and the reason they did it is somebody had 84 chickens on a third of an acre in a subdivision. And for the longest time, there was nothing we could really do. Even the zoning at that point in that particular town didn't regulate it. So here, what they're trying to do is strike a balance. And there's
And I agree with
there's a fair amount of research out there with respect to the smaller areas. If you want to have personal use chickens, I'll call them that. There's research out there that says for a family of 4, 6 chickens will lay X amount of eggs, so you can have your fresh eggs from your chicken. And it also strikes that balance of not having. I don't mind the sound of purring chickens. I don't mind the sound of a crowing rooster, but I'm in the minority. There are a lot of people that don't. So we try to strike the balance. Now, I hear you sitting here saying you don't like the regulation, and
No,
if you have a problem,
I'm not saying I don't like the regulations. I'd have no problem with regulations, and I don't think anyone else in the room would. But they seem a little strict.
but where? So where are they
everybody's
strict?
saying they want people to enjoy chickens and to have it, and to have people come here for agriculture. And for most people, this is making it almost impossible.
Well, so
especially the little family that just wants, I don't know.
So for example, 6 chickens on up to an acre. Are you saying you should have more chickens on up to an acre? Are you quibbling? And what I think the whole purpose behind this is to let these guys know. I mean, if you're saying I don't want any regulation, well,
Yeah,
I mean
but
that is
I'm
what it
not
is.
saying that.
But what I'm trying to say here is to let these guys know that hey, we think that 6 chickens on a half an acre is good, but 8 or 12 chickens on a full acre. Do you have a problem with the number of chickens? Do you have a problem with the cost of the permit? I mean, exactly what is your concern so that these guys, because they don't have to adopt these tonight. They're gonna sit here, they're gonna listen to your concerns, and I think they've done a great job, and go back and maybe hold another meeting and say, okay, you know, on the first day, we got a lot of feedback on the, you know, that an acre with just 6 is way too big of a, so
You know
what is your concern?
I would be more than willing to sit in on a meeting. I'm sure somebody else would come forward in the audience to sit in and have people that this is actually going to impact and involve have a little input in it.
That's why
I'm
we're
not
holding,
saying-
that's why we're
It's
here.
called a public hearing.
That's what we're here
Give us
for.
your specifics.
All right.
What
By all
would you
means.
like to see?
I got the impression that this was a done deal.
No, this is a draft, and that's what I stated at the beginning, is that's what we're here for. We're not gonna just write these up and push them off. We wrote up what we came up with, sent them off to town council to make sure they made sense. You know,
I
so before we put it out there, so that we at least had, we couldn't hold a public hearing and say, hey, we're thinking about doing some chicken regulations.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted to have something as a guideline, and we wanna hear
Yes.
what.
I think the thing that's concerning me most is that 50-foot setback.
We have no control over that. That is a
That's
zoning
zoning.
bylaw.
Zoning.
That is a zoning bylaw, and we cannot undermine a zoning bylaw, because the zoning board is,
When did you have any idea when that
the zoning went into
particular,
effect?
came into place?
I have no idea on that.
Yeah.
I can research that for you and see when
And
that was.
and that's
when that became-
That-
it's a lot.
We have no control over that. We can't regulate what the setbacks are. That's
Now, What
them.
about people whose coops aren't at a 50-foot setback?
That's, again, the zoning bylaw. That is not, you have to maintain the zoning bylaw. That's why we have the 50-foot regulation. That's what they're saying.
Is zoning going to be coming after everybody who has chickens now?
Technically, if you have animals, you're supposed to notify the zoning board. That's not us. We're not dealing with that.
See, a lot of that information was not clear. And it certainly wasn't clear back when I bought my home. And I'm sure a lot of people,
The only thing I can say to that is, I don't know what the zoning was. Zoning changes at every town meeting.
I know.
That's
But-
why you should attend it, or read, at least read the articles, because then you'll know when the zoning has changed.
This is the first time, you know, I don't get newspapers, local newspapers usually. And thankfully, somebody told me about this.
Just so that you know, it's always posted on the website, all the articles, the warrant items and everything, just so that you see, because if you don't attend meetings for a few years, all of a sudden, all these things go by, and you're like,
Changes happen.
when did that happen?
That happened.
And even,
Okay, what does a person do when they've already invested a lot of money and they have a building that's wonderful and it's a good size on their property for their animals? It's not bothering anybody, obstructing anybody's views or anything like that, and there are a lot of money into it, you know, and now all of a sudden the zoning laws are changed, and what do you do with that building? Do
You'd
you,
have
do
to
you
talk-
razz it?
you'd have to talk to zoning. You'd have to see when it
Go
was
before
changed,
zoning,
and
yeah.
that's not, unfortunately, that has nothing to do with our regulations. We have to abide by their setback, because they have that setback.
Oh, which portion of this, I'm sorry, I'll be going. Which portion of this is actually under your jurisdiction?
We put together everything, but we have to follow the setbacks, because that's zoning.
Okay.
Yep.
So
And
that-
we had to follow that. Agricultural, according to zoning, is anything over 5 acres. Anything under 5 acres,
I have a question. I live in Zone 10. I'm not even part of this. What came out doesn't even list Zone 10 as being impacted.
all the zonings have been taken off on the new updated. Town council had
Okay,
advised
but
we didn't
this is
list.
just within the last few days
Right.
that it happened.
Yes, town council sent back the review, and they advised us to take off.
I just came because I thought I might want to speak up about certain
Absolutely.
things. And so does it not impact me because I was in what used to be Zone 10?
Anything under 5 acres
Mm-hmm.
or as of right now, as we have it written, Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 3, anything under 5 acres, it affects. Anything over 5 acres, it does not. We do have that, the provision of the Mass General Law right now.
Okay. All right, so even if somebody is zoned in an area that allows light agricultural,
There,
it
there is no
applies?
light agricultural zoning. The only agricultural zoning, and that's why we reviewed the zoning bylaw to be in line with it. The only agricultural zoning is over 5 acres. If, in the zoning bylaw, that's the only agricultural zoning. So that's why we lined up with zoning.
all right. So you can't open a business in what used to be Zone 10. You could no longer open a business anymore since there's no zoning?
There is zoning, but there, we're just talking about agricultural.
Right.
I don't know what you know.
All right. I still would be happy to be on
Can
any
you-
type of committee discussing.
But please tell us, this is why we're having this meeting. We want to know what don't you think is, like he said, the number
Well,
of
it was the
chickens?
opposites. I
Okay.
thought those, and I understand.
apologize.
I
That's
understand at
beyond our
this point,
control.
You know, maybe letting people have a few more chickens, you did change it, and I might have missed something here. I can understand no roosters. And I can understand you want to have a certain amount of footage.
Which usually, the amount of footage we're asking for is not major at all.
Oh, no.
It's just so that they, again, don't end up in a cardboard box
I
situation.
agree. I don't know. I'd have to look at this in more detail than I had looked at it prior to coming, and she just handed this to me, and I really didn't have an opportunity to read it all the way through. But I would, and I'd be very glad to come and help out when you have your next meeting, just to be another voice in the room.
And I can offer that if you have something that concerns you, that you come up with, by all means, you can email it into the Board of Health.
Okay. And the very
Absolutely.
last thing, the variance.
Mhm.
Is that going to be something that's realistic, that people can say, listen, this is my situation, I already have this, or as this lady was speaking, this looks like it's a working farm, that they would take her into consideration for a
That's
variance?
exactly, that's why we have it. And
Okay,
it
that's-
wouldn't just be us deciding, either we would send out our animal inspector, we would send out our health agent, perhaps one of the board members may go out, and it's something that we would take, to have them advise and discuss, and have you, come in front and discuss it. Just at a meeting, it would be on, like I gave the situation of, you have 2 acres of land, you have farmland all around you. You're in a different situation than 2 acres of land of Camelot Circle, there's not a doubt.
Yep,
So, absolutely. And that's why we put that in there.
okay. All right, but keep me in mind. and
Absolutely.
I'll go away.
No, thank you very much. Come on.
Hi, I'll be quick, I promise.
That's okay.
Do I have to state my name and all of that? Okay,
Yes,
Tiffany
please.
Bro, I live at Bylaw Road, Dudley. First of all, I want to say thank you, because I know it can't be easy sitting here with all of us who feel very passionately about our animals, and I know that you must have put a lot of time into that. I appreciate that. My question is when you ask about specifically what we have issue with. So when you have the restriction of only 6 chickens on under an acre, it's my understanding that you cannot purchase chickens unless you purchase 6 at a time. So if you purchase 6 and something happens to 3 of those, then you cannot purchase anymore. You can't get back up to that 6 without, and like my issue is I just feel like that's a little restrictive to limit that to only 6 chickens.
Okay.
And I understand where you're saying a family of 4, you think that calculates as enough eggs, whatever. Not every chicken will lay eggs on a regular basis.
Right.
Some people have a lot more. So one of my issues would be that number, limiting us to that number, because again, if you're under that, you lose a couple of those chickens, you can't do anything about that. And I'm not a type of person who would give away or kill off 3 chickens so that I could get more. I mean, I agree, my chickens are my babies as well. I appreciate having them. But that would be something I would have issue with.
Okay, thank you. That raises a good point.
concerns more than questions, but
Sure.
a couple of changes that I see in today's version.
Can you identify yourself?
sorry.
And
My
that's
name's
okay, just for his records. Thank
Scott
you.
Mead, 152 Southbridge Road. Threw a wrinkle in my prepared speech here because of a couple of things you pulled out, but most of it's good. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I usually don't get involved in things like this, but after hearing about these regulations, I felt compelled to voice my concerns. I feel that it's in conflict with the views and the best interests of the vast majority of the residents at Dudley. It's contrary to the agricultural character, spirit, and history of the town, and the biggest issue I have is I question the validity and the legitimacy of the regulation, period. And so, to begin, I think it's important first to establish the separation between livestock and poultry. Keep hearing everyone defer to zoning and livestock and the 5-acre, exemption, but livestock is, at least from my understanding of it, ungulates, hoofed grazing animals. Currently, the Dudley zoning bylaws extensively define agriculture in the definition listing, section 6.01.01, as, quote, the production, keeping, or maintenance of plants and animals. Is that me? Keeping or maintenance of plants and animals useful to man, and it includes examples of agriculture, such as fruits of all kinds, including grapes, nuts, berries, vegetables, livestock, which includes beef, cattle, sheep, swine, horses, ponies, mules, goats, any hybrids thereof, and poultry and poultry products. Based on the Dudley zoning bylaws' own definition, livestock and poultry are separate and distinct items. There's no mention of livestock. There's no other mention of livestock within the bylaws. There are several references to livestock in the town's general bylaws. Most of them concern dog liability. Article 27, 3G, 10A, 10B, C, and D reference damages caused by dogs. But in each instance, the bylaw uses the term livestock or fowl, which clearly indicates a distinction between the two. And again, Article 51, Section 2 of the Right to Farm bylaw defines agricultural to mean, among other things, raising of livestock, including horses, and separately, keeping and raising of poultry. Code of Federal Regulations 29, Section 78328, the term livestock includes cattle, sheep, horses, goats, and other domestic animals ordinarily raised or used on the farm. Turkeys or domesticated fowl are considered poultry and not livestock. USDA, same thing. I mean, it goes on. Poultry and livestock are two distinct things. And the distinction between the two is important because the use regulations section of the zoning bylaws, specifically section 20302.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
I'm sorry.
No, if you're gonna continue on about the zoning.
I'm gonna bring this all together for you in a minute. Just
But
bear with
just-
me. It's important.
Excuse me, just let me state one
I thought
thing.
you had the floor.
It is a public hearing, and I am allowing you to speak. I'm just asking one quick question.
Yes.
If it's going to continue about zoning, we don't have control over that.
Oh, but it applies.
It-
I understand you don't, and that's my
Excuse
point.
me, I had not finished speaking either. If it implies to zoning, we cannot fix anything with zoning, do anything with zoning. That is separate from us. We spoke with the zoning officer and town council to get the guidelines of which we had to follow, just so you know where we came up with the information. Go ahead.
Understand. Trust me, I'll bring this home for you. Sure. Do we use Robert's Rules of Order here, by the way?
Please continue. It's a public hearing. We generously allow people to speak.
Thank you. I lost my spot, so excuse me for a second.
Take your time.
Okay. The use district chart in the zoning bylaws contain an agricultural section, which, remember, is defined in those same bylaws: fruits, vegetables, livestock, poultry. Indicates livestock raising on parcels less than 5 acres is a permissible use requiring a special use permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals, provided stables or enclosures 50 feet from the lines. Other farm activities, which, based on the distinctions made in the zoning definition section, would include things like production of fruits, vegetables, having a garden, and the raising of poultry, are explicitly permissible as a matter of right in all districts. Based on this, I question the validity of the town's proposal to regulate and charge a fee to raise poultry when it's specifically permissible as a matter of right in the zoning bylaws. Which brings me to the issue here. Putting aside whether it's appropriate to classify poultry as livestock or not, prior to this proposal, the town regulated agricultural practices, including fowl, exclusively under the zoning bylaws. The process to create or modify zoning bylaws is dictated by MGL Chapter 40A, and it's more stringent than adopting general town regs. They require submission to the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, public hearing, proper notice. And there's some case law that supports this exact situation. I apologize to Mr. Spenlinhauer for pronouncing his name, but Spenlinhauer versus the Town of Barnstable, 80 Mass Appellate Court 134 in 2011. The issue surrounded a dispute over the parking regulation in this instance imposed by the town's Board of Health. Spenlinhauer challenged the validity of the ordinance in Superior Court on the grounds that it amounted to an attempt to impose a zoning regulation without following the procedures by Chapter 48. The town countered with the assertion that the ordinance was perfectly valid health regulation. Judge agreed, ordered a judgment declaring that the ordinance was valid. On appeal, however, it was noted that Barnstable zoning bylaws already contained a section specific to the regulation in question. It was decided that since it was subject the imposed Board of Health regulation existed in Barnstable zoning bylaws, it was evidence that Barnstable had historically regulated parking through zoning, not general regulations or bylaws. The court ruled that if there is a perceived hole in the zoning bylaw, it cannot be filled through the enactment of general ordinances. Rayco Investment Corp. Versus Selectmen of Rainham, 1975, 368 Mass 385, involved the town of Rainham using its regulatory powers to modify the issuance of permits for, in this case, for trailers, not poultry, but the conclusion and the reasoning behind the conclusion still applies. The court observed that the town had regulated trailers exclusively under the zoning bylaw before it adopted the bylaw in question and viewed the town's new approach to licensing as substantially undercutting the assorted protections contained in Chapter 48. They noted that the use of the town's general regulatory power cannot be exercised in a manner which frustrates the purpose of a general or special law enacted by the legislature, which, Chapter 48 in this case. It appears to me that the proposal of this regulation is trying to do just that, based on the language included in the regulation, which provides animal count limits and setbacks, which, as you said, are already in the zoning bylaws. The two pending litigations against the town of Dudley in Superior Court surrounding this exact issue, the hasty and unmindful manner in which this regulation was drafted, using language which you, Ms. Canoyer, stated in the June 18th Board of Health meeting was pulled from the internet or provided from other towns. Specifically, I think you mentioned Foxborough, which...
I did not. I mentioned Lanesboro. We did look at Foxborough, but we pulled from
I heard
Lanesboro.
Foxborough, that's all. And the lack of discussion about the draft by the committee members during the Board of Health meetings, where you told Mr. Purcell that it was, quote, done on the fly. Both Spenlinhauer and Rayco also touched on the relationship between public health and the regulations in question. I understand the Board of Health acts as a licensing body in Dudley. It's authorized to adopt rules and regulations to aid the enforcement of licensing provisions. I also know this rulemaking power is not restricted to the adoption of rules related to public health. Parts of the regulation are clearly within the jurisdiction of the Board of Health and beyond the scope of the zoning bylaws, such as Section 2, Part 1, which deals with good management practices, square foot guidelines, and the authority of the animal control officer. Section 2, E through H, which require animals to be on the premises, free of odors and filth, detail waste disposal responsibilities, provide Board of Health abatement authority, and cover commercial sale restrictions. These statutes alone, along with a restriction on maybe roosters for the noise, would be sufficient to resolve the many recent complaints brought to the town and serve to promote the intent of the regulation, which is to enhance the quality of life of the citizens, protect the general public from damage, injury, or illness caused by unregulated animals. But it's difficult for me to imagine a menace to public health that arises from a resident owning 7 chickens instead of 6, or from somebody not paying for a chicken permit. The chicken to acreage ratios and the setback requirements included in Section 2, A, B, and C, and D of the proposed regulation don't address any health hazards associated with raising fowl, nor do they enhance the quality of life for the town's citizens or serve the interest of public health. Further, there's no support for the proposition that these parts are subject to regulation under the Board of Health's power apart from specific exercise of zoning power. This is evidenced in the May 4th, 2017 Zoning Board of Appeals special permit hearing where the Board of Appeals limited Mr. Lucas Kiwar's 21st Ave to 5 chickens and required that they be caged. As it's historically been within the town of Dudley, these are land use issues and are therefore not subject to general bylaw that the town can enact in the exercise of its regulatory powers. Additionally, Rayco versus Rainham indicates that municipal regulations that simply overlap with what may be the province of a local zoning authority, as this regulation clearly does, are to be, at least parts of this regulation clearly do, are to be treated as zoning enactments, which must be promulgated,
Got it.
all right, in accordance with the requirements of MGL Chapter 48, which this regulation is not. So I do believe the Board of Health should have the authority to enforce and abate violations of unacceptable animal conditions, negligence, public nuisances, willful and reckless misconduct. If the Board of Health wants to pass a regulation specific to management practices, odors, maintenance, waste disposal, sale of goods, noise, roosters, and nuisance abatement, I'd accept it and support it. But what I don't accept is a regulation created to fill a perceived void in an existing zoning bylaw when the proper procedure was not followed to amend it, especially when existing case law suggests that the town is prohibited from imposing it. I also reject the contention that I'm required to obtain a permit and pay an annual fee to conduct activities on my own property that are already explicitly granted to me as a matter of right. I understand from one of Mr. Purcell's comments at a recent Board of Health meeting that you were not required to hold this hearing tonight, so I appreciate you taking the time to hear my concerns, and I hope you consider my contentions before enacting this regulation. Thank you, all of you, for your time.
I'd be happy to respond.
Certainly.
It's not, actually not the first time I've heard that argument. Boards of health have broad authority in promulgating regulations. They are separate and distinct from zoning bylaws. With respect to the number of chickens, with respect to the amount of land that's required, I do believe that there is a rational basis for that, and you'll find it that that the number of chickens, the more chickens you have, the more dust, filth, not filth, manure, noise, and the like. And as you've indicated, are clearly within the Board of Health's ability to regulate. So, in order to keep those particular issues down, I do think that there is a rational basis for limiting the number of chickens per square foot of land or per acre of land. I have heard that argument many, many times, and I can say to you that I don't know if it's a majority, but a lot of communities throughout the Commonwealth have backyard chicken regulations, and I have not found one that has been where? And I have not found any appellate level cases or even Superior Court cases where a successful challenge has been launched against one of those regulations.
Do those towns have zoning, existing zoning regulations that overlap the Board of Health regulation? I mean, if even the town of Oxford, if you look at their Article 51, the language differs from Dudley's in that it doesn't supersede any of the other, zoning or other regulations on the books. Where Dudley, as it stands now, that's not the case.
I don't understand what you mean by supersedes.
Well, because setbacks are already specifically outlined in the zoning regulations, I don't believe that it can be included, or it should be included in this proposal, in these proposed regulations.
All right. So, I mean, they simply mirror the zoning bylaw.
We've deferred to zoning this whole meeting. I don't know why they can't be left to zoning and excluded from the regulation.
Well, I think that there's a rational basis for having chicken coops located back from property lines, more so than, for example, a backyard shed. As we probably all know, the closer to a dwelling, easier it is to hear the chickens, easier it is to smell the chickens. And, I know that chicken owners out here are gonna be mad when I say this, but they also, to the extent that they attract rats because of the grain and whatnot, it's gonna be closer to other dwellings. So the setbacks that are in here, I believe there's a rational basis. And it wouldn't make a lot of sense, would it, if we said that the setback is 5 feet off the property line, when in reality, zoning wouldn't allow you to do it within 5 feet. It'd have to be 50 feet, so we would have this contradiction in the two. So it's harmonized. So if you're saying that you think that the zoning, that this particular regulation is invalid because it contains a setback that mirrors the zoning bylaw, I guess I don't agree with that, since there is a rational basis for that. And I don't think that it would be successful on a challenge. But, you know, that's certainly something that you can try if, in fact, this ever becomes adopted.
Thank you.
Just one moment.
Hi there. Cheryl Lito, 38 West Dudley Road. I'm actually a new resident to Dudley. I've lived here, I think, almost 3 years. And I do have backyard chickens, and now I know I have to contact the Board of Health to let you know, and so I'll do that, very shortly.
Not a problem.
And I also know that I'm supposed to apply for a special permit, but as someone who spoke before me said, how do you do that? Because I actually wrote an email to the zoning board saying, how do I apply for a permit? And no one got back to me. So hopefully I'll leave here with that information. I want to be practical about my approach here. I heard a couple things, and I really do believe in transparency. So I'm going to be transparent with you, and I'm hoping that maybe you can sort of elaborate on some of the things I bring up. I heard the talk of financing the animal control, and what that made me think of was these fees. And it seems like this is a regulation that is also designed to increase a little bit of revenue to help fund this department. And I understand that.
It's just
Go right
just to fund the animal inspector.
Right. Okay.
That's all. And go ahead, I'll continue
All right,
after about the
'cause
fees. We'll talk. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that
Yeah.
because, I'm a cynical person. I'm not a very trusting person. So when I hear stuff, I'm like, are we just going to have to pay fees, for what? Just to sort of perpetuate somebody's salary or who knows what, or to fund other things. So
It's a volunteer
I appreciate
job.
that. Pardon me?
This is a volunteer job.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't
well,
get paid.
No problem. I appreciate
It's
that.
not going to us.
But what else I did hear was that we actually can provide some input into the numbers. And that's where I personally have an issue. I appreciate the young man who spoke before me, because what I think was missed, which was very important to me, is that he made a distinction between poultry and livestock. And I actually would like to support him in getting you to hear that I think that's a really important distinction between poultry and livestock.
We are not the ones deciding between, yes, thank you, between poultry and livestock. That's defined in the zoning bylaws. We have our definitions here, so just
No
so
problem.
we're not,
Gotcha. Because where
That's
I'm
theirs.
headed, no problem. Because where I'm headed is I'm really into this idea. I moved to Dudley because I have this dream of homesteading, right? Which a lot of Americans do. So when I look at my 3.5 acres that I have, and I see the number 18, including poultry and all livestock, that's where I start to have an issue. Because we eat a lot of eggs, and so 16 chickens is awesome. But then I'd like to have some goats. I don't know what else I can have on my property. Obviously, I'll have to research that. But for me, that number is a little too low for the parcel of land that I have. Okay. So I would like to see these numbers adjusted. I think what I'm understanding is this law is going to,
regulation.
regulation, thank you, is going to get submitted.
At
or
some
has
point.
it-
At some point,
Okay.
we're in the,
Public hearing stage.
yeah,
Gotcha. So
Down and
this is
dirty.
going, you're moving forward with this. And what I can do as a citizen is at least provide some input into what I think is reasonable. I would like to see these numbers up for, and I agree with all these folks here who keep backyard chickens. The numbers, they do grow, and they grow for a number of reasons. 16 will keep us fed regularly. But when the hens start laying and you need to get new, I appreciated what that woman said about Tractor Supply, you gotta have 6. But what do you do with your old hens? Not all of us will slaughter them and eat them. We will keep them as pets. And so now we have unproductive birds that we're gonna keep. So the number does grow. Eventually they do, they have a lifespan, so eventually
Right.
they do fall away. So I think for me, the biggest concern is the changing of the numbers. I think maybe doubling, moving, doubling it across the board, 12 instead of 6, 24, 36, is something worth considering, and possibly even making a distinction between fowl, or just saying this many fowl maybe, and some number of livestock. That might help some of us here, because I think the majority of people here are really all about the chickens.
Right.
And so I think maybe clearly defining the number of chickens and maybe increasing that number as well, and then clearly defining a certain number for livestock, that might help this situation.
Okay, thank you.
One more
Very good.
question. How do I apply for a special permit?
Contact.
Contact me, I'll give you my information.
All right, appreciate that,
I'm
because
not
I
the
don't
zoning
like
person.
not
I'm not the
being
zoning
in.
person, but I
Yeah.
can get you in the
Yeah.
proper.
All right, I don't like not being in compliance. I am a law-abiding
But
citizen.
for general reference, if you come in on Thursday evening between 5 and 7, Gloria's here and she takes care of special permits.
All right, and
The
I-
office is on this floor.
Yeah,
Just to-
I also, I think it was Charlie who was up here before, said she would gladly participate in figuring out what the numbers are. I'm just throwing numbers out myself, but I would
Appreciate that.
gladly participate in that, should that be an option as well.
Okay, thank you. And just, I want to back up to one of the things that you said. We've gone around with the fees, just so that you understand. We had discussed having just a minimal fee, just a $25 fee. And then other things were thrown out about you need to justify the animal inspector. So nothing is set in stone regarding our fees. Just, again, nothing is set in stone, except that we want to go forward with something. So we appreciate you coming and appreciate, but I just wanted you to understand. And the fee is just for the animal inspector, which I think it was 3 years ago, the state mandated that we had to pay her a certain amount. And that became like, at that time, we had no money in the budget. Where do you pull that from? So we've been, over the years, trying to think of things to help supplement that state mandated, but I appreciate everything and
I can
excellent
understand it,
suggestions.
and I would imagine that the number of chicken owners or livestock owners and inspections who then,
It's kind of like the more you
Notify
have, the
the
better
board.
the less it'll be, the better it is, it's one of those situations, so we appreciate that, thank you.
okay.
CJ Road, Bylaw Road in Dudley. I want to look at the positive side of, I do pest control, I have my own company. And I want to do the positive side of having chickens, coming from experience for 14 years doing pest control. And I get where you guys are coming from with some of the situations you're dealing with. They help control ticks. You mentioned rats. They don't attract rats. Rats are already in the area most of the time. They don't help the situation, but say, okay, you live near a river, you're already gonna have rats. I live near Philo Farm, so before I got chickens, I had tons of mice always coming towards my house. Now I have chickens, I have no mice. They help with my mice situation, different things like that. In some occasions, yes, they you'll have rats in a certain area, but rats are already in the area. It's the same as like, saying if I bait a house for mice, they're going to be attracted to the bait, different things. Then mice aren't attracted to the bait; they're already coming to the house already, and I'm already taking, helping the homeowner out. So, they're already in the area. The mice are already in the area, the rats are already in the area, in situations like that. 14 years doing pest control, I've only seen a few homes that had chickens that actually called me up because they had a rat problem, but they lived near a river or a different situation. But I get it from you guys' standpoint of being a health issue and stuff like that. You mentioned smell. Well, I mean, I smell cow manure down the road. I smell the septic system from Southbridge because I live in Philo. I mean, it's a horrible smell, and I smell it every day.
Yep.
And I get it. I hate roosters, so I get your point on that too. So, I mean, I hate to get waken up at 3:30 in the morning by my roosters. I don't know if I'm talking about that. Sorry. But I love chickens. I mean, where we live, I didn't know that we had to report them either, situation. And my wife did research and everything like that, and she didn't see them. But besides that, like they're her pets, and the acreage of land, we just, I don't know if there's anything you can do for the people that already have what they have, or don't make them throw away their loved ones or their pets or anything like that. I don't know. I'm just.
We
trying to say
appreciate.
something.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Every voice is
Sure.
important.
Good evening, I'm Sandy Lito, 38 West Dudley Road. I just have a couple of things. Thanks for listening to all of us. I'm sure, I've volunteered myself occasionally and don't do it anymore. So I have a couple of comments here. I understand why there is, people feel like there's, we should be setting limits on the number of chickens people should have based on the lot. I guess if you've got a third of an acre, you shouldn't be having 75 chickens. I wouldn't want 75 chickens either. However, perhaps the breed of chicken also should be thought about, because there are some that are really tiny, and there are other breeds that are really large. And there are some breeds that I'm not sure, even what you have written in here is large enough. You know what I mean? So perhaps we could take that into consideration. And, it's just a small thing that some of us chicken people, I know you can't make everybody happy, but you can try.
We're trying to compromise
Right,
with the best.
a compromise.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like if somebody has Polish hens, they're tiny.
Right.
They don't need a giant, thing. And I have, something else, roosters. I understand about roosters, I really do. And I do, I understand, I don't want to get rid of, I wouldn't want anybody to get rid of any of their animals because of this or any other reason. But we all know hoarding happens. We see it on the news all the time. Chickens, horses, dogs, cats, it happens. And that's why we're here, I'm sure.
Yes.
So that it doesn't happen in our quaint little town. However, I do think that I have a problem with no more than, there are 18 animals, but no roosters for 3 to 5 acres. Roosters do serve a purpose. They do protect their flock. I don't think it would be a hardship on if somebody has 3 to 5 acres and they're complying with the other, everything else that you're saying, if one rooster were there and the chicken coop's where it's supposed to be.
That's where a variance would come into effect. Okay.
So you would be, somebody,
Yeah.
that's zoning though, right?
No, the variance for the
that would
rooster
be-
would be through us.
Okay.
Again, because, I'll take for your situation, where you are is much different than
Right.
Camelot Circle.
I know.
Or if if somebody has 2 acres there, it's much different.
Yeah,
So-
well, that's why we bought this house too,
Right.
specifically.
Right.
In this town, and, because of,
Right.
we would like to have.
And that's why we
better
put
whatever,
that
yeah.
variance
So
in
that,
there.
I just wanted to throw that out there, and again, some breeds aren't as loud as others.
Absolutely.
Also, what is gonna happen if this passes? What is gonna happen to all of the chickens in town that people can't keep? I know that's not your problem, and nobody's saying anything and nobody's talking about it, but if they can't go to all the other towns around us because they all have this too, what's gonna happen to all these animals? Now we're gonna have, in our little town, we're gonna have an influx of homeless chickens. I'm just saying,
And
everybody
I
here,
completely understand. I think,
we already have a bad name because of the cemetery thing. Let's not do this with.
no, and that's not, our intentions are to, and I think what most, I can speak for myself, not the rest of the board, or, you know, as we put these forward, if, okay, we pass regulations and you come to us, and I'm just using,
Yeah.
and you have 24 chickens and you're only supposed to have 18, let's just go with, not that, we're gonna look at your situation and we're gonna say, okay, you know, I think I would look at it and be like, okay, you know what you need, we understand that you've had them, we'll work, that's how I would feel.
You get
I
along
can't
with your neighbors, is
Yeah,
everybody
we
copacetic with
absolutely
that?
do.
The
And,
whole-
you know,
The
I
whole
heard
thing
you
will come
mention-
into,
oh, I'm
the big picture will come into play.
Yeah.
That's, we don't wanna be like, you have too many chickens.
Right, you know, that's not, it's a guideline for, I would like to say, moving forward.
Fine.
Yeah, you know, and again, that's why, and the numbers are all.
Well, and I appreciate you, I can see you taking notes and stuff, and I
Yes.
definitely appreciate that. You know, you guys aren't just sitting here and listening to us, you know, and to be like, oh, we're gonna do what we're gonna do, you know what I
No.
mean? But you're taking notes and you're listening to us, because, you know, a lot of us, you know, there are tiny breeds, and, you know, we end up, some of us chicken people just end up with chickens because people
Give them to you.
give them, yes, and they're like, oh, save these chickens, okay, you know, and then it's like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? you
Right.
know? But also, you know, when you said you know, a family of 4 can live off of 6 chickens, I don't know any of those families. I eat 6 eggs a day to get 25 grams of protein and half a, you know, serving of fat, so, you know, there's that.
Thank you. No, but that's good information for
But
us to
also,
take under.
I think that was it. Oh, I had the fees also. I mean, can we do this, the variance, does it have to be a yearly renewal? How, I mean.
The
that-
permit
Yeah,
fee?
well, no, because there's the yearly permit and then there's a yearly renewal for the variance.
The
for
variance doesn't
variances.
cost anything. The variance is just you coming to us discussing it, making sure your situation
Okay,
is
so
the
there's
same.
no fee for the
Not
renewal
for the
of the
variance,
variance?
no, not-
Okay, so I'm
nothing
like,
through
how
us.
much is this gonna cost me?
There would be a cost to, for notice,
For the special
for the
hearing?
variance.
For the hearing.
for the variance, because under the variance provision
Yes.
here, you'd have to notify abutters within 300 feet. So if the neighbors would have a problem with all your chickens, they come and say, don't give this lady a variance, because it's killing me. But here it does say, notice shall be the sole cost of the individual applying for the variance.
Right.
I apologize.
I don't know how much that is.
If so would it just have to be notification by mail?
Yes.
So just certified mail,
Basically, the cost.
So that's like $25, $30 or something.
depending, yeah. And, but there's no fee to us for the variance, I apologize.
Okay, yeah, that's just, I was concerned about that.
thank
I'm
you.
like, God, I'm gonna get feed to death here just because I
No.
fell in love with birds. Who'd have thought, you know? But that's it, thank you.
Okay, go ahead,
As
Ted.
a concerned citizen
Yeah.
of 27 Sunset Drive, because I am the clerk, I'm not allowed to speak. So as a concerned citizen of 27 Sunset Drive in Dudley, I would think that the yearly renewal of a variance could be handled by the yearly inspection of the animal control
And that-
officer versus making someone who got a variance renew it every year.
Right,
It would be based on the sole discretion of the animal control officer, whether that had to be done or not.
Yeah,
I would think.
Yeah, no, you're correct. It's the one-time variance, and then when she goes out and inspects, or if the health agent, whomever, if they go together, if they found an issue, that would be, but otherwise, it would just be, yeah, you're in compliance, everything's good, you know. That- You're welcome, thank you.
Ken Corch, 63 West Dudley Road. It's kind of a shame that people have to spend so much time on an issue which is really a bunch of stupid people, you know. And what I see in the articles here, the proposed regulations, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, it's kind of like cracking an egg with a sledgehammer. I mean, the crowing rooster is like the barking dog to me. Animal control comes over and they shut the dog up, or the dog goes out, or something happens, okay? The chickens running around, that's ridiculous. I mean, if the fowl are penned and taken care of, there's no problem, all right? And I've had chickens since 1981. I've practiced what I believe are correct animal husbandry practices, okay? My coop is certainly adequate in size. They get a yard to run in as big as this room. And, you know, my coop is up on piers, no rats. If I don't, the grain is I leave bagged, or if I got scratch feed, I put it into a metal garbage can, because I've had chipmunks will go through the plastic on you. So you take care of your animals, and I think most of the folks here, this is the ilk of people you're talking to, and we kind of feel like it's like, huh?
Unfortunately, it's not just you, though. Board of Health over the years have gotten complaints of chickens living in basements, of hoarding houses and chickens.
We're not talking about Southbridge, are we?
No, we're talking about Dudley.
Oh.
So,
But it happens everywhere.
it does happen everywhere, and we understand that. It's like preaching to the choir, the ones who are here that.
The good ones here, we get that.
No, it's just that, unfortunately,
It's
it's like, it's easy, the people who do it right are the ones that,
Always.
yeah, whatever, okay? Now,
Which is why we're trying to
kind of
find
from
a
my
happy
perspective,
medium.
I'm an industrial 130 in the first zone, which was initially exempted. And rereading this, I'm now subject to this. Now, not only am I an industrial 130, I am in the adult entertainment district.
And don't forget.
And I can sell marijuana.
That's right.
And now I'm gonna go, I can't have too many chickens.
Again,
mean, folks.
Mr. Korch, you would fall under the variance.
Okay. All right. When I said, if I get some due consideration, that would be appreciated, because it's like, it's a,
And I will tell you, when discussing variances and stuff, you were right here going in my head, so.
well,
I specifically.
that's a better part to be in than I usually am. That's
True,
okay.
true. But I specifically took what you had mentioned to me
Okay.
and relayed that information, and that's one of the concerns of wanting to have a variance, is that I thought it was 1984, sorry, that you had chickens
In
from.
that variance, could I get like chicken entertainment? Would that be possible?
Go for it. You got adult entertainment,
Naked
dress them
chickens?
up, and you'll be good. And sell some on the side.
And the other part the number of chickens, I have a problem with that. Okay, I have 2.05 acres of land, okay? It's not going to come out, so it makes no difference, okay?
Yeah.
At the moment, due to two recent departures, I have 34 laying hens, 9 of which are going into the second year. The other ones are a bunch of old-timers, which may croak in the next week or two. Otherwise, I'm calling my friend in Southbridge, and I'm going to say, look, I've got so many that I've determined are not laying sufficiently, and being an economic person, they're going to go into his pot. But at the same time, all right, I have 24, let's call them juveniles, okay, that I raised from chicks. All right, so that puts me at, 34 and 24, I'm at 58. And I also have one very happy rooster. So I'm glad I have a chance for the variance of.
And again, I'm gonna use you as an example, because I know where you live. Where you live is a different situation. That's why we added the variance. You're not on an acre down on Mason Road with your neighbor's lawns connecting.
I just don't feel so bad for you folks having to put up with this. This is, there are bigger fish to fry in the world. Unfortunately, we have people.
Thank you, we appreciate, and believe me, everything that you did contact me about, you were heard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Victor Kelgren, 64 Airport Road. My family's farmed for, I guess, over 40 years in the town, and I'm currently chairman of the Agriculture Advisory Commission. Just a few things.
Sure.
You had mentioned that we had been advised about this, but we really weren't, we never were able to have a meeting about it.
I know that, I apologize. I spoke with Mr. Joseph, and he said he was reaching out to you.
To me.
Yes.
But I'm chairman, I'm not the
Right.
committee.
No, but he
the committee.
told me that he was speaking with you and everything regarding that, so I
So
apologize.
anyway, it's just, like, talking about the variances now, if there's a need for so many variances, there must be something wrong with the figures. That's my take. And I think some of that could have come out of the advisory commission, along with, we have some advisory members also. But some of that input could have come. What towns, just name a couple of towns that you looked at.
Okay, let's see. Foxborough, Lanesboro, Uxbridge, Sudbury.
Okay. Okay, that's
We
good.
looked at the surrounding towns.
I'm just curious, you know, I mean, I think Dudley is unique, I think, from some of those places, maybe not from others. I mean, some of the ones you mentioned were pretty unique from that. You know, I think that being a right-to-farm town, which is what our Ag Advisory Committee is trying to focus on. And I know I was told that, don't worry, Victor, this isn't going to affect any farmers in town. Well, right away I worried. We actually got put out of business by the Board of Health. Yep,
How
several
long
years
ago?
ago.
I apologize. I
We were
was.
selling raw milk, and the Board of Health said, can't do it anymore. And I had this room full of people, but it didn't matter. We were out of business. That's why I sold Ramshorn Road Farm. Anyway, so I get concerned when we start making regulations on farming.
No, completely
And when
understand.
I'm told it's not going to affect any farmers, I don't take that. And 5 acres, you know, now it's so different. You know, when we first moved to Dudley, there were tons of big farms, you know. Well, now it's little farms, you know. So 4.5 acres, you can do a lot of farming on 4.5 acres. And we actually have some new farms in town that are starting. And this is, you know, some of those figures just aren't going to match up with like 4 acres of land.
Okay.
I'm going to start from the beginning.
Okay,
because
let me,
otherwise I'll
may
be-
I
Yeah.
just interject something? Jeff, he did bring up the right to farm. Can we clarify what the right to farm is?
I would be happy. The right to farm is not something that really limits the town in regulating. There's zoning bylaw, Board of Health regulations, Conservation Commission regulations, Planning Board regulations. What it does is it's a statement to the world that we encourage farming and that we want to have people come and farm. But it's not a prohibition against regulating farms. So I understand your point, and I've had a lot of people bring that up in these situations here. But it's not something that would prohibit the reasonable regulation of chickens, ducks, raw milk. And I think that probably came from that's
Yeah.
probably a command that came from the state that you couldn't do the raw milk.
We don't the Board of Health doesn't regulate raw milk. The state handles that.
Probably.
At this, now, as I am on, like, I can just tell you, a couple of years ago, when Kebke was doing raw milk, we didn't regulate them, the state regulates them and sends us reports. Just so
So
you,
you're regulating anything under 5 acres with these regulations?
yes,
Okay.
Yes.
So my point was just, nowadays, farms can be only 3, 4 acres, and you can actually make enough money on 3 or 4 acres to qualify for 61A also. You have to make a certain amount of money on your farm to
Right,
qualify
right.
for the lower tax rate.
right.
But let me start from the beginning. Enhance the quality of town, life in the town for the citizens. To me, saying that you can't have a rooster, that, you know, I'd rather hear the rooster than to have a factory next to me that has 3 shifts, sorry. So that's, I just don't think roosters have anything to do with the health of the town. Sure, if you had a whole bunch in the cellar, yes. But to have 1 or 2 roosters, I have relatives, not in this town, they actually raise their chickens. They don't go to Tractor Supply or Runnings and buy them. or Putnam farmers, you know, they raise theirs, and to do that, you gotta have a rooster. And they have houses around them, you know, but right now, it's 5 acres, so my concern is that that might get changed someday. You know, I mean, what if somebody who has 10 acres and has a chicken farm there, you know, is it gonna be increased the amount of acres that the regulations?
No, because again.
Oh, not right now.
We're only focusing on what is considered, what is not considered agricultural via the zoning. That's all we're following, so that we're not violating the zoning. We're trying to stay in harmony with them.
And one advantage of having small farms in town, being a right-to-farm town, and young couples had actually come into Dudley and started farming because of that right-to-farm. You know, okay, there's no solar panels there, and there's no houses there, so you still have some open land. And that is an attraction to people. The public hearing, wouldn't you be required to have a public hearing even on that first variance?
Yes, we would have a public
Oh,
hearing.
I thought you just said,
No, the first variance you'd have to have a public hearing for.
you,
Then the variance would renew each year at an inspection.
okay, so, like, the gentleman that has more and wants a variance, he would have to have a public hearing.
He would have to have a public hearing.
I know from my neighbor's experience with real estate, that can get expensive. You know,
It depends.
sending out the registered letters, just so people know.
Yep.
I guess that's basically it. Like I say, I would appreciate any feedback to our advisory committee
Absolutely.
on changes that you make, and
Can you leave, and do you have an email?
yes?
If you can give your email address to Ted, we'll definitely keep you.
Yeah, I wonder if we shouldn't have all that on the, I think that should be on the Dudley website, our committee and our emails, I believe. Okay. Agricultural Advisory Commission?
If not, I know we can get in touch with you through Mr. Joseph, so if we needed to find something out.
But we would appreciate that
Absolutely.
opportunity to give feedback instead of going to Foxborough and asking them what they have.
When did you have a meeting set up, or?
We meet the first Thursday of every month.
And what time?
7 o'clock.
And do you meet here?
Well,
Down
a
the hall?
room here, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, there was one other thing that I had a note and I didn't catch it.
Sure.
Not being able to sell anything but eggs, okay? On the, is in here. You know, like when we had chickens, our chickens would stop laying, I used to sell them. So I have a concern that they wouldn't be able to sell their older hens that aren't laying anymore. I mean, some
They could
people
sell-
do this not just to have a pet chicken, they do it
Right.
to make some money and sell eggs.
So are you're, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, about selling an older chicken that's,
Right, in
Okay.
other words,
yeah,
we're actually gonna have Dudley Farm Days on the 5th of October on the
Okay.
Common in, across from the church. And, you know, if somebody wanted to bring a cage with some hens, I would like them to be able to do that. But with this regulation, it was only eggs that you could sell.
Well,
no.
Oh, I read that wrong?
well, it says that a residential property owner may not sell any meat or other products from animals or fowl kept under the provisions of this regulation for commercial purposes. So I think that the occasional sale of a hen or two or three, once every couple of years,
Okay,
I don't
so-
think that's a commercial purpose.
Okay, so what if another year for Dudley Farm Days, someone comes into the town this year and starts a little farm on 4.5 acres, not 5. He's gonna be regulated, you know, to be able to sell his agricultural product.
Well, Under the-
I don't know what the
Right.
problem is there for selling agricultural products.
I think the purpose behind this regulation is not to have people selling meat hens or raising 10 or 15 chickens, slaughtering them every 6 months, and then raising more. I think the purpose behind this is, for commercial purposes, I think the purpose behind this is for personal consumption and/or eggs for your personal use. It's a backyard chicken. With respect to the way it's currently written, it does exempt the provisions of the regulation shall not apply to farm properties of agricultural operations recognized under 48 Section 3. And you saw me looking at my phone, and I wasn't, playing around on my phone. I brought up the definition of agriculture, and that is all such activities may be limited to parcels of 5 acres or more, or to 2 acres or more if the sale of products produced from the agricultural blah 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 use on the parcel annually generate more than $1,000 per acre based on gross sales. So as it's currently written, there is an exemption for those type of activities that qualify as agricultural uses, commercial agricultural uses.
I'm hoping that our new advisory commission could help in this instance, because we have people that have animals didn't know about the regulation, didn't know they had to tell so-and-so. So that's going to be something that we're going to put on the agenda for our next meeting, because that's something that we can help with.
Absolutely.
And we'd be able to come and get advice from, we'll find out who we should come to for legal advice as to exactly what it says and what they can do and what they can't do.
KP Law.
Okay?
I will try to, I'm usually here on Thursday nights anyways, so I'll try to stop in at one of your meetings.
I'm sorry?
I'm usually here on Thursday
Okay.
nights.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd love to have you come.
I'd love, and I definitely think it's a good thing.
Any first Thursday.
Yeah. And I will,
You need a new belt because of a hearing aid. I can't hear anything when that's running.
oh, it's awful. The sound in this
squeaky
room
belt.
is horrible. But thank you very much.
Now, you also said in the beginning that it was hurting your budget, the health budget that you have. How much do you have to pay her? What do they tell you that they have to pay?
The state mandates $3,000.
$3,000, okay.
And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have a budget like we do,
You don't have that much to deal with.
that's a lot of money. It's a lot of
But
money.
of
in a
course,
budget.
now it's gonna be, your fees are gonna have to be there because
And we don't want
you're
to
gonna
make this
get
a
a complaint, you're
hardship.
gonna have to go check it.
Right, and we don't want to make this a hardship. Our intent isn't to be like, feeing you. We just are trying to recoup some money for her position.
That's why the more regulations you have, the more infractions you're gonna have, so I
I'm-
don't like a lot of regulations.
I agree. We're hoping that this just, I guess we're hoping that everybody, it creates a nice harmony and everybody has the chickens and we're not having chickens running all over town and she's not getting calls of chickens crossing West Main Street, and there are things like that happening.
Well, the main thing that I would hope got written down was that, the Agricultural Advisory Commission would wanna be involved in it.
Absolutely.
If we could.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, so as not to deter anyone from coming and even having a 4-acre farm.
I appreciate that, and we would look forward to working with you. That's okay.
Okay, I just have a question because I have multiple roosters. As Laurie can attest to, I've had them since I was a child, always consistent. They don't make a lot of noise, usually it's just 1 or 2 in the group, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
They have a pecking order. My question is, what do you do when people are in infraction and they have the roosters? What's gonna happen to them? Because I know in Webster, they go to me. And I've already talked to the town administrator about building a chicken coop at our shelter. Because what happens is people go to Tractor Supply, they go to Runnings, they get a straight run, they can end, like I said, 6 chickens, They can end up with 6 roosters.
Yeah.
Then what do you do with the roosters? Because even Nevin's Farm, places like that, very hard. They get filled. The problem. And really, I agree that I've woken up to a rooster since I was a child. And when you're talking about a variance, my roosters, my house, I own 2 houses on Mill Road, side by side. My family owned a third, they sold it. He's not a very friendly neighbor. Doesn't like my animals, has fought me on it for years. So if I go for a variance, he's gonna contest it for no reason other than the fact that he just doesn't like me. But my animals were already there before him.
We won't, when you go for a variance, we're not gonna take just one neighbor. I'm just using examples, I don't know. Let's say if you came for a variance and you have 8 neighbors and all 8 neighbors are saying your roosters are unbearable, they are all hours of the night, and I think the animal inspector, our health agent, they're gonna go out, they're gonna look at the situation. Again, we're not gonna go just by, he said this, she said that.
Right, but again, we're talking about animals that were clearly established. We're not talking about somebody who moves into a neighborhood, gets animals and gets a rooster, and all of a sudden there's a disturbance. We're talking about animals that were clearly established before these people even moved into the neighborhood.
And again, I can only, through our regulations, we'll look at everything,
But again, what do you do with the roosters for those people who can't have them, per se?
So currently, the town of Webster, the roosters you're saying end up with you. So the town, that's something we should consider.
We absolutely
Where are these roosters gonna go?
It's a big problem, because there's only
That's
so
how
many shelters.
you've ended
can
up
take.
with so many roosters.
I have my limit, I'm at my limit, I don't want any more.
So how are you turning away the rest of them?
Well, luckily I haven't had any. Not in a while.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well, but Webster has also, how long have their regulations been in place with the no rooster effect?
Well, they allow roosters in certain agricultural, obviously.
Yes.
But
Because I do know where my sister lives, they're not allowed.
no, they're not allowed there where she lives, no. But sometimes we turn a blind eye to those who have
Exactly.
had them for years and already established in the neighborhood because there is no place to put them. And unless somebody's complaining, we say that's a zoning issue. The only time we get involved is when zoning says, go pick them up. And I say, what do I do with them? I can't bring them to the dog shelter.
Okay.
I gotta bring them home.
Very good point.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes,
Thank you.
So maybe
I'll look into
Jen's
that.
gonna have to build a chicken coop.
I'll talk with Jen. Thank you.
Just a point of information about the roosters.
Yes.
At the Dudley Library last week, there was a gentleman from Pool and Grain,
Yep.
who did a very good talk, and even though I've had chickens for years, I went, because you can always pick up something from somebody, okay? And I believe the designation he mentioned was PIPV. So the buyer that you get your chicks from, all right, they should be certified, I believe it's with PIPV. And I've been buying my chickens, I don't go to Tractor Supply for anything. I don't go to Runnings for anything. I go to Putnam Farmers, because when you walk in there, you're talking to people who have horses, goats, chickens. You can ask a question and get an intelligent answer. And I've been buying there for over 20 years. I've had one rooster, and that's a lot of chicks. A lot of chicks, and only one rooster. So, and I know they get them, and they're the PIPV, they're sexed, and they also have 2 inoculations. So.
Okay. It's very good information.
Thank you.
There may be a little bit more than what you get at Runnings or at Tractor Supply, but $3.50 a check, I'm almost guaranteed, I would say guaranteed, I'm getting a hen and, I don't have to deal with the rooster. And when I've had to, unfortunately, my rooster has, the last 2 well, let's put it, they wear out, okay? And I've had to go buy a rooster, which can be a little hard in February, because nobody has them. But
Good information.
just anyway, just information.
Thank you very much.
Just another quick note on roosters. I was actually at one time on the craft committee up at Bay Path when they had agriculture there, and there were students that were doing projects, and they were raising roosters. You know, a group of roosters. Some of my neighbors probably wish they had a rooster, because I have beef animals, and when you wean the calf, the mother and the calf cry all night, all day, for a week. So I don't think anyone should worry too much about a rooster.
Thank you. Sure, certainly.
Hi, my name's Tom Bugby. I live on West Dudley, Sturbridge Road. And I moved to town 25 years ago, and I've been gentleman farming ever since. I got a greenhouse, a garden, and chickens, roosters. One rooster anyway. But when I moved here, my taxes were a certain amount of money, and now they're quadrupled. And me and my wife keep going like, if they keep raising our taxes, we're gonna have to move. I said, but we got a nice piece of land, why don't we see what we can do with it, you know? So we got a greenhouse garden and chickens, we sell the eggs and vegetables, whatever's extra. We take the manure and the dust and we make compost out of it. Nice.
Yeah.
Make nice vegetables with that. We sell the eggs, the neighbors, they're begging for them, you know? So we try to make our tax money doing that. You know, you talked about the chickens crossing the road, and every morning and every night I drive somewhere and I gotta watch out for turkeys and deer. So, you know, I'm aware that they're gonna be crossing the road, and I look for that. People have to get used to that, you know? You know, the right to farm, I've been doing it, I've been homesteading since I've been there, just, you know, I'm retired now and I'm living on a little over half of what I used to make. So, like I said, my taxes went up quadruple. I got a little over an acre of land, and we've been getting by, you know, to pay somebody extra to do that, to pay somebody for the right to do that, so that somebody can get paid for their job. I don't know if that's fair. If there's complaints, you go after that complaint and you take care of it. For dogs barking, I don't know how you handle that. For roosters crowing and people are complaining, you handle that. But to go making all these regulations, and like my neighbor said, you're trying to crack an egg with a sledgehammer, you know? And I don't know, just need to look at it. There's people just trying to live, and you know, like our folks did back 50 years ago. Dudley was a farm town, and that's why I moved here. I don't know what it is now, but let's be careful, you know, what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Sansucci, I live on Ramshorn Road. Y'all ought to go to Key West. You ever been there?
No.
There are chickens everywhere. My question is, some of the verbiage here, this reg is about chickens.
Fowl,
Birds.
yeah, you know.
So why does it say
It does,
fowl?
well,
or-
it does pertain to, oh, let me think. The rabbits and
Rabbits.
ducks, you know, thank you.
It says fowl or animals in a number of different places.
Right, animals are fowl within the town, but excluding household pets, animals that are normally kept inside an owner's residence dwelling, including but not limited to dogs, cats, ferrets, fish, domestics, or exotic birds. So
So the
it's,
animals,
it's including rabbits, turkey, geese, ducks, hens, chicken, roosters, over 4 months of age. No, excuse me. Yeah, so that's what it's including. I
so
apologize.
you should have something here that indicates what the animals are.
It does at the top of the regulation under section 1, the purpose.
I just don't think it's very clear.
It says,
She's asking what you can add as the other animals.
I mean, you're talking
Excuse
about
me.
guinea pigs, hamsters, mice, animals that live in a house.
those are excluded from,
Okay,
right.
but wherever you have animals, I think you should have the animals listed so it's clearer.
Okay, we'll check with town council. Absolutely, thank you.
And if these regs have to go to town meeting,
No,
they don't.
they do not. Board of Health regulations only have to go through the Board of Health. It's not a bylaw. It's a regulation. Like in the past, Board of Health has passed nail salon regulations, cemetery regulations.
So what's the difference between a regulation and a bylaw?
I'll let Jeff explain it so it's proper.
The difference would be most likely in the way they're adopted. A regulation from a board of health does not, under the law, require adoption by town meeting. A general bylaw and a zoning bylaw require adoption at town meeting.
I just think I think this room should be packed tonight, because I think there's gonna be a lot of flack if these regs are adopted the way they are.
That's, well, again, we're not necessarily saying they're gonna be adopted the way they are, and that's why we held a public hearing and got the information out there so that we would hear feedback and we can go in and adjust and discuss what information we liked, that information. That's why
So your plan is to adjust these?
we're gonna discuss it, we're gonna go over the suggestions and everything
And then you will
discuss.
have another public hearing?
Another public hearing.
You don't have to, but it's certainly within your purview because you've got a lot of probably good feedback.
I just don't
so-
know how soon, we're gonna discuss it at meeting, and I can't say like next week, next month, we'll have another public hearing. But I would assume, because we didn't have to have a public hearing for this, but we did want to, because we do want the input, from everyone.
Yeah,
So I would say most likely, yes, we'd be holding another public hearing.
I would hope so, because if you make any changes, I think people should know what those changes are before they're adopted.
We've done that. No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Too much water.
Marcia Wagner, Hickory Drive. Excuse me. The fellow who said break an egg with this is like breaking an egg with a sledgehammer, and someone else said that when the issues arrive, just address them. You're saying that the salary for the inspector is $3,000 a year?
Mhm.
How much does it cost for an attorney's fee to do this? What we're doing tonight? What are the attorney's fees?
I'm not privy to that information.
Okay, I'm just trying to put perspective on what we're doing here.
We're just trying to do things the right way.
Thank you.
Canada again, hi. I just had a quick question.
Could you just give your address for his information,
Eagle
please?
Drive.
Thank you.
I was just wondering what zoonotic diseases you guys are concerned about to why you're trying to regulate these animals.
I think there was some aviary issues,
Specific diseases, please.
sanitation.
Well, specific disease, zoonotic diseases.
That without looking up information, I don't know, I'm not,
Our health
that's not my
inspector's not here
specialty.
tonight. If he was, he would be more in line to answer that
Well,
question
can you
for you.
please put that online, all the zoonotic diseases that you are concerned about? I'd like to know for myself, and my daughter has a bunny. I'd love to know why you want to get rid of my daughter's bunny and
We're
why.
not saying we want to get rid
Well,
of
it's
your,
it's in the paperwork, but I'd like
it's
to know
not
the
to get rid
zoonotic-
of.
Well, you're trying to regulate them, but I'd like to know the zoonotic diseases. I would assume you guys would have been prepared with that information. Since this is a public health board, I don't understand why you don't have that information.
Our public health inspector is not here tonight, but he could answer that for you.
Okay, can you please get
Certainly.
him to answer it for me?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know every single zoonotic disease that you are concerned about with every single animal that you have named in here.
Jeff, is that something that we can
You
respond
should be
to?
able to do.
Excuse me,
It's
I'm just
public
speaking to
record.
my,
If the health inspector knows.
if he does, okay.
I believe there are also other not just disease-related reasons for this bylaw. There are odor,
Right.
noise, the like.
Sure, I will get that information. Ted, make sure that,
Oh, I
Thank
will
you.
follow up with that. I'll give you my email after or whatnot, so you can email it or write a certified letter. So I'd really like to know the diseases that you're so concerned about that you can't even tell me now.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Cheryl Leach again,
Hi.
38 West Dudley Road. I think I may have missed a piece of information when we were talking about what happens with this next. I heard the distinction between how a regulation is adopted, or rather, I heard that there is a difference between a regulation being adopted and a bylaw being adopted. What is the next step for this once you revise it?
Once, we will have, there probably will be the next meeting that we have discussion about it, because I'm sure each of us will go home, review everything, review our notes we wrote. The next meeting, there'd be more discussion, come up with another draft, and then, depending on how many meetings that takes, there would be another public hearing.
And then does this group vote, or does, okay, so it's basically
It's-
this group here
yes. Yep.
that votes on it, and then you'll determine whether it passes or becomes a regulation or
Right.
not. Okay, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
May I ask,
Yes.
because I feel challenged a bit, is there a line item in here that, that asks about disease,
Diseases.
injury, or illness? Is there a disease causing? Is there a line in there that has to be answered?
I will,
I-
we'll
I just
review
don't
it with
see
Tom.
I don't see it to address it.
Yeah, I will review with Tom, the health, I thought he'd be here, but we'll review it with him and go over.
Damage, injury, and illness that may be caused by unregulated animals and fowl. It's the last sentence of section 1.
Injury or illness that may be caused by unregulated animal or fowl. Okay.
Okay? Sure.
I know this is a long night, so just one clarification.
That's
So,
okay.
Just when it talks about 6 individual animals, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that right. So if I have one pet rabbit, I can only have 5 chickens, which means I
At this,
couldn't have.
at this point,
Okay,
but.
which means I couldn't have chickens because I can't.
You could, right, and that's,
Okay.
we appreciate what you brought up to us about that,
Oh,
so.
and I don't
yeah.
currently, but I
No,
had a
no.
rabbit that was litter box trained, and it never would have occurred to me that that would come under some sort of regulation to
Right.
me
Is he
having
kept
Is that an indoor domesticated rabbit?
domesticated.
Then he would be.
It wouldn't be, okay.
No,
okay,
that would not be, as long, yeah, if he's inside.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you, we will, review all the amounts of animals and things like that.
So we should probably add rabbits then.
I think it is right there. Oh, but in the other one?
Yeah.
True. Okay, yeah, make that.
Some good stuff.
Does anyone else have anything else? Sure.
I think a lot of the smaller yards are gonna have a problem with the.
If, just sit down so they can hear you, sorry, no, that's okay.
I think we're gonna have a lot of problems with some of the smaller yards and the 50-foot setbacks. If one were to apply for a variance for that, would that go to you or to?
That would be zoning.
Well,
And, go ahead.
It would, the way this reg is written, it'd be both. Because you have a special permit requirement under zoning, which requires 50-foot setback.
Right.
Okay,
These regs also mirror that. So to the extent that you went to the zoning board of appeals and got it down to 10 feet, then you would have to come here and ask for a variance from this reg, because it mirrors the zoning.
okay, we'll have to look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come before us after the zoning.
Right, we'll have to look into that, because I don't know, really don't want to be involved with that. Okay.
from what I understood, he said they have
Right.
to go there, get that variance, and then come before us.
Right.
So it mirrors.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else? Okay. Board members, do you have anything else you'd like to? No.
We're all doing this to make as many people happy as we can. I don't know.
Sure, come on up. Caught me just before I was starting to close it up.
Hi, my name's Jose Herrera, 13 Mill Road, Dudley. My question is, you guys passed this law already, because you want to pay the animal inspector $3,000.
No, we're already paying the animal inspector $3,000.
So this is why this is going on, just to pay her that amount of money?
No, that's not why.
First, you gotta earn that money.
No, that's.
If you have an animal
excuse-
control officer, animal inspector that's not even doing the job when people call them, this is ridiculous.
As
So
far
when you
as,
guys come in with this
Excuse me.
idea about taxing us or whatever about the chickens, come on, that's ridiculous, man. You all stand around saying, "Oh, let's just charge them this and these fines, just to pay this amount of money to this person," while you're standing around eating chicken. Come on, give me a break.
no, thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We appreciate all the input. Definitely check the website. We'll be posting, when our next meeting will be, anyways, just to let you know, Tuesday, September 17th, which most likely will be discussion, and we will be posting when there'll be a public hearing again. If at any point you have information that you come up and you think about after the fact, by all means, you can email it into the Board of Health. Board of Health email is boh@dudleyma.gov, and he would refer it on to us. If you think of something tomorrow that you wanted to bring up, by all means, we appreciate any feedback. I'll try to attend your meeting on Thursday night. I appreciate everything, and so at this time, I'm gonna make a motion, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Public hearing has been closed at 8:25 PM. Okay, so up next on our agenda is the clerk's report.
My chicken shred.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, if I can, we're still continuing our meeting.
Oh,
and
I just want to give him my email.
He has to
so
give
we
his
can get
report
my
right now, I apologize. It's his time to speak. It's his clerk report.
Can I get my email too, so I can get that information?
If you could write it on that paper right over there where you had to sign in, he'll gladly email it to you.
You can write it on the back of this.
Great, thanks. Ted, do you have your clerk's report?
I do. I'm feeling threatened by her abruptness.
Okay.
So bear with me.
Take your time.
Oh, yeah, Robin?
To continue on with the meeting,
Excuse me.
If we're in a meeting,
Jeff, do you
that's-
mind just stepping outside? We're still doing our meeting.
Are you
Thanks.
guys good with me?
I am, thank you. I'll be in touch with Robin or you.
Because I took some notes too. We-
Okay, yeah, we'll touch. Thank you so very much.
All right, see you later.
Go ahead, Ted.
So the clerk's report is very simple. It's a combination of July and August to date. Food permit applications, we had one for a company, a business that's coming into town, taking over an old business or an existing business. Haulers permits, 2 applications, 5 perk tests for new septic systems, 5 septic system applications, 3 septic repairs. Both Dudley Nichols College camps that already happened, there were 2, 3 pool permit reviews, and ongoing housing complaints. Were 8 of them, most of which are resolved. A couple are still ongoing. And that is the clerk report.
Thank you very much. We have no health inspector report tonight. Tom had to attend another meeting and apparently couldn't make it back here in time. So at this time, I would gladly entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. I'm assuming no other discussion.
Aye.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Meeting closed at 8:29, sorry. Oh, boy.